What is up, everybody? Welcome to another amazing episode of the Evening Alpha. I'm your host, Todd Wanish, 26-year veteran, comics, animation, now Web3, startups. It's been kind of a wild ride. One day I'll get a break, but my hair keeps getting grayer, so I guess it's a good thing. If you're just joining us, if this is a brand new to you, you've never seen this before, and you're like, "What the heck is this?" I've seen a ton of interview shows. This is probably trash. No, it is not, and I will tell you why. Because we are unlike any other AMA or interview show that's out there. Honestly, a lot of interview shows, there's some good questions out there, but what we find to be sort of our magic formula is that we actually enjoy having conversations with people. So this is really a coffee talk. It's an entrepreneur talk. It's a founder talk. And what we try to do is we have a conversation with amazing people in the Web3 space, artists and creatives and entrepreneurs and founders. And we really do our best to get to a point where you feel like you actually know the person that you are going to support, right? A lot of times, especially in Web3, all you have to go on is a sales page or a bio. So a lot of times people are anonymous. We want to get past that, open that veil up, and really get you to know the people behind the space, the people that are involved, because there's some amazingly incredible people, talented people, and we find that it really separates. It can really separate projects. So that is what we do here. And tonight I am excited. I have a very special guest. I have Agnes Garbowska. Is that how you pronounce your last name?
Yeah, Garbowska.
So I got to say, because this is a comic thing. One of the most amazing things with comics is that you get to know the artists because you get to recognize their name. One of the small curses, I have a last name Wanish, so I understand this. One of the small curses on comics is that everyone mispronounces your name forever, right?
Yeah, I got used to it early on, especially with a longer Polish last name. It's very common to mispronounce. So I'm like, it is what it is now. I mispronounce names all the time too. So, oh well.
Yeah, I know. I try my best, but it always hits you. So you are the founder of and the artist really of Digidoribles. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, Digidoribles is my project. It's my baby. I'm really, really excited that it's in the world now. It is, of course, an NFT project. It is comic book and art themed because that's what I know. I've been in my own industry for about 17 years. I've worked for most major publishers on most major properties like DC Superhero Girls, Teen Titans Go, My Little Pony, you name it. There's a good chance I might have worked on it. And with Digidoribles, I want to take all that experience and I want to give it back, because there's a lot of comic book projects out there, but how many of those comic projects can actually tell you about the process, talk to you about color theory, and create together? So I really want to do a community-based storytelling project where we create the comics together, and each week we talk about it, we come up with ideas, we explain why they work, why they might not work, and together we're going to be creating the stories. So I'm really, really excited, and it's been so much fun so far. Like, the community's aspect of it is my favorite part. That's why I love like comic book conventions and stuff. So I'm like, I really like this.
Yeah, I'm the same way. It's bringing in the community and educating and just having a group kind of work on a project together. There's really is a special, like, I don't know, there's a special glow about it, right? What's your experience with coming into Web3? Like, it's because we've talked with other comic artists and creators, and it's not exactly, it can be a little difficult sometimes, right? You have the challenge of the tech side, even what is Web3 and getting an understanding of what an NFT is and blockchain. And then there's also kind of like a little bit of like artistic social pressure on the other side. So did you just happen to like say screw it and jump into it? Or like, how did you kind of figure out, like, how did you go from saying, okay, traditional, 11 by 17 pages to moving into Web3 and doing NFTs? Like, what was that process like for you?
It was actually extremely difficult, and it wasn't difficult because of the NFT community. It was mainly difficult because of the comics community and because of the misunderstanding on NFTs. So it actually took me over a year to actually get into NFTs after the first time I said the word NFT, and I got attacked like by my fans, by my peers. I was said that children could never look up to me again. Everyone unfollowed me, said very horrible cursive things to me, DM me very, very unpleasant things, all because I said the word NFT. And I got scared off just like many creators did. So it made my journey into NFTs very difficult because I was doing it on my own. Like all the research I was completely doing on my own because I was too afraid to even say the word NFT again after I got attacked so heavily. And I'm like, guys, but there's so many benefits for creators, like the creative freedom, the ability to build within a community, royalties.
Thank you.
Like royalties on digital art is like unheard of, and so many artists, especially like myself, have to work digitally because when you work on licensed properties, it's so much easier to do the corrections digitally, especially for the page rate you're getting. Surprise, surprise, comics, you don't do it because it's amazingly paid. You do it because you love it. And I've always loved comics, and I don't see myself doing anything else. And NFTs came around, and I'm like, well, why not do something differently? Why not experiment? And now this technology is a new tool for you to use, so why not? So I was doing most of the research on my own. I started following people in the NFT community on Twitter just because I was curious. I wanted to learn. And if it wasn't for Josh Blaylock finding me in a comment, Digidoribles would have not even come to life because he's like, Agnes, you're in NFTs? You're interested in them? And I'm like, wait, are you? He's like, dude, I've been in blockchain for a while. And I'm like, what? So Josh, like me and Josh came together. I told him about my idea. He told me about what he was brewing, and it was just like match made in heaven. And yeah, with his help, and he had the tech team behind him, which I needed to launch Digidoribles. That's really how it finally came together. And I became very proactive on Twitter Spaces, getting to know everyone, getting to know people in NFTs, whether it was a tech side, other artists, communities, because it's so important to do the research before you even do anything. Do your research. And I was
100%
doing all the research.
Isn't it amazing? Like, I'll tell you this, like I have a background in comics. I worked at Marvel for a while. I had the chance to work with Stan Lee when he was alive. And when I came into the NFT space, I had the same thing. Not as hard. Like I didn't get directly hit, right? But I knew a lot of friends. I knew a lot of people that had to go through kind of like the trial by fire, which is insane and ridiculous and should never, like, it's just mind-blowingly ignorant. Oh my God, I could tee off on that. But what was so interesting in contrast, and I think what a lot of people in the mainstream comics kind of miss, when I started doing my own research, just like you did, and I started reading about it, just like you did, and following people, just like you did, it was such a night and day experience that I actually went into my Twitter feed and I deleted everybody. I took my Twitter feed and every single person that I followed, minus some close personal friends, right? I got rid of all the people that I followed. I eliminated the entire list. I started basically, I think I had 20 people left, just again, people that I actually knew, right? Like really close personal friends. And I started purely following people in the NFT space. And my feed, I can tell you, is night and day. There's no negativity. Everyone is positive. It's all what I kind of originally dreamed Twitter could be, and maybe what it was in the beginning. I don't remember at this point, but like, it's positive, it's art, it's interesting articles, it's people talking about creativity and the future and all these awesome projects that are launching and supporting one another, and community aspects and all of the stuff that I kind of wished that kind of like just everyone had in general, let alone comics, right? But even in comics, like back in the day in the 90s, when I was kind of coming up and stuff, like that was how it was. It was open and engaging, and everyone was talking about all this kind of cool creative stuff, and all this stuff was going on. And you wouldn't have dreamt of attacking anyone for anything, let alone a brand new, experimenting in a brand new medium. Like, that's like someone yelling at you for using crayons.
Yep, I lost thousands of followers, but you know what? The really cool thing is that a lot of peers, it was mostly peers and the fans, they still kept following me. It wasn't everyone. Like, mind you, I lost thousands, but a lot kept following me, and mainly because they're curious. So, like, a few months ago in December, when I publicly announced I support NFTs, because I want to support all creators. I can't just support comic creators or gamers.
Right.
I want to support everyone. So I publicly announced, hey guys, I support NFTs. And the people that followed me were really cool, because slowly as Digidoribles came together, I started getting a few messages, most of them private, some of them public, going, hey, it's really cool that after everything you're still doing it. I'm really starting to become curious about it. So I'm hoping in like 2-3 years, everyone does start asking those questions, because I don't think NFTs are going anywhere. I think they're going to continue evolving and growing. So I really think it's only a matter of time before it starts becoming more and more adopted. And I really am encouraging any content creators who are curious, yeah, just send me a message. I want to educate, because it is a learning curve. And once you go down the rabbit hole, though, there's no going back. And I fell down that rabbit hole and I'm not coming back up.
Yeah, I'm a lifer. I tell everyone, I'm like, no, I'm all in, man. This is the best. I waited my entire life for something. I mean, this was like a date. This is like my, like Todd is a 13-year-old daydreaming about like what life could be like in the future, in the year 2000. You know, like it's so amazing. And I agree. I really do. My outlook is like, you know, I think people that are naysayers or non-believers or whatever you want to call it, like these people that just kind of attack things they don't like, I think the tide will change when everything when they don't have a choice. Meaning Marvel is already they're already licensing comics to companies like Vive. DC is licensing Batman.
Doing more. Where is it? Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
I'm looking for something while you're talking.
Oh, go for it. But like, you know, DC just did the Bat Cowl launch. They're going to continue. There you go. Right. Perfect example. Exactly.
And it's like comic book stuff. So
That's right.
From comics.
That's awesome.
DC, pay your royalties.
That's right. That's right. And once they're kind of forced to work for a company that openly does it, then I think the title change, and then they'll open up to like things like royalties. Like the royalty thing for me was like game over. Like once I realized that that an artist could create something and you could actually, you know, have a stipend for the work that you create in perpetuity potentially. That is a game changer. That means that if you have it within you to build a small audience and grow a following and really work hard and put your work out there, that you can build a support system way beyond a Kickstarter, Indiegogo, way beyond a Patreon. Like it's like it can be life changing, right?
Yeah.
And
100%.
so I'm really curious. So Digidoribles. So the artwork is phenomenal. I really love it. And you know, I've actually seen your work because I've got 2 kids, and so like My Little Pony and Care Bears is all over my house. So I was like, oh yeah, this is gonna be awesome. So how are you thinking about structuring? It's what do you call that? Not Llama Land. It's
Llamaville.
Llamaville. How are you structuring Llamaville, and how when this goes live and people are coming in, how are you thinking of structuring it so that people can really participate in the story building and the creation part?
Well, it is already live and we've already been doing it. So basically I decided, instead of doing one long story, which it seems like a lot of NFT con projects, they're doing like longer stories over 20 pages or like longer trades. I decided, why not do short stories anywhere from 6 to 10 pages, so that way we can tell multiple stories, and as we tell these stories, we shape Llamaville. So the first story is a Welcome to Llamaville story. It features a new llama coming into town, which is all this is all me working with the community to come up with these ideas. And basically the moment he gets into town, he does something very, very bad, and destroy something very, very important for the celebration of the Llama Queen. And we are introduced to the characters, to the different parts of Llamaville, following this character's solution, very creative and wacky solution to the problem, which he by accident created himself. So the really cool thing is we follow this character to the different parts of Llamaville, so that way we are now introduced to going by the beach area, going to the residential, the town square. So we thought it would be a really good way to introduce people to this world. And the way we started with just like a little kumbaya, like, hey guys, this is what I want. I want to do an introduction to Llamaville. How are we going to do this? And then we just chatted. It was just a very open chat, and ideas started coming together. I'm like, oh, that idea might work. Oh, no, I don't think this will work. And I explained. I didn't just say, no, this will work, or no, this won't. I explained why, from a storytelling aspect, it's going to work and not work. And once we came up with that, we started breaking down the ideas and started forming it into a story that was cohesive. So that way we had our introduction, we had our growing tension up to our climax, and then we had the resolution. So that way we covered all the aspects of a story that we need to cover to make sure to keep it interesting, to make sure to keep the story flowing, and also to come up with this wacky solution to our problem. So it's a really fun way that we came up, and it was like once a week we did sessions, but we also have a live chat on Discord. The Discord chat, you can enter input anytime. So if you can't join one of our live sessions, everything's updated in the chat. So just feel free to add ideas there. So it's really cool because even if you can't make a session, you're updated about what was talked about and you can still contribute. So now we have our whole story together. It is 10 pages and I'm starting to pencil it now. So now I'm going to be talking about how you pencil a story, because we talked about creating a story, which was the first part. Now we're going to be talking about how to pencil it, how to make sure the panels work. So that is the next step. And then of course I'm going to ink it and the dialogue. So we're going to work through all the steps till we have the final comic to present to everyone.
So badass. I love it. These are recorded sessions?
They are not recorded because Discord does not record. And right now we're
right.
forming everything on Discord, but during the sessions, I type out exactly what we're talking about. I talk about ideas. I always do a summary after every session. So every single thing that was discussed is in the summary. And I also post all the images we created. So if we worked on layouts, the layouts are posted. If we updated the layouts are updated. So every single thing is always updated with all the newest information. So everyone has everything they need for the story. And if they missed it, they could just catch up. And then I update again every single time.
Oh, that's awesome. You mentioned at the beginning how, and you and I think kind of hit the same chord where there is something magical about bringing a community in and working together on something. What have you felt? I mean, so for people out there that don't know, comics is, I think, one of the best mediums on the face of the earth. Right.
Agreed.
It is magic, and it is also one of the most, it's magic in the output and what you are able to create, because there is no limit. Likewise, it is also, in my opinion, one of the most difficult things to do because of the sheer amount of skills you need to have in order to do it at a professional level. Right. It is incredibly hard. So and on top of that, normally in the normal comic process as a freelancer or consultant or what have you, you're basically working in solitary, right? You're working by yourself alone, head down, headphones on, maybe, like just drawing and pretty much doing it all day, every day, because that's just what it takes. Yep. So now you're kind of switching that where you're opening up this door and having like a lot of people kind of stare at you, basically, like even virtually, right? Like you're getting all these people involved in the process. How have you seen the differences, and was it a struggle to kind of bridge that gap, or what have you seen as like the pros, the cons?
Yeah, for me, it's a little different because I also do comic conventions very differently than most artists. What I'm most known for, which, sorry if my voice is a little jacked up. I just finished a 3-day convention. So the day afterwards, my voice is a little off. So I'm sorry if little, that's why I'm drinking a lot tonight with the water. But I do live sketching at conventions. So you come up to me and you say, I want you to draw Batman. And I actually draw Batman right there in front of you. It takes me about 10, 15 minutes. It's a watercolor drawing, and I do them live every single show. And that's what I'm most known for. So I get a lot of these requests, and I really like doing them, because if I just go to a show and take commissions where my head's down, I'm just working, I'm not doing anything different than I'm doing at home. Then why not stay at home? It makes no sense to me. I go to conventions because I want to meet and interact with the fans, especially like the kids. Like, to them, painting live and them seeing it come to life is like magic.
Magic, yeah.
So I love it, and I love the fan interaction, and that's what I took to Digidoribles. Is now we have that digital fan interaction, but we are in this chat together. You're watching me do it. You're asking me questions while I do it each week. Unfortunately, sometimes I do have to push it back a day or two because I still travel for conventions since I'm still a working artist. But yeah, we basically hang out. You watch me do it, and you ask questions. And if we can't hang out, you ask questions in the chat. But I want to make it as interactive as possible, because a lot of people have questions. They've never seen a comic come to life. So if I could show a little glimpse of how it's done, I think that's really cool. And for me, just that interaction and being able to answer all the questions and share my knowledge. I have 17 years worth of knowledge to share, and I love educating. So for me, it's just a lot of fun. There wasn't much adjusting, but the biggest trial and error was just learning like the NFT community. That's still the biggest like trial and error for me, is launching a project as a creator who's never launched a project. So a lot of that is the biggest trial and errors, because I'm doing this for the first time. So I don't know what I'm in for. And I'm just trying my best along the way. And I'm trying to make it as enjoyable for myself and for the community as possible, because this has to be fun. You have to enjoy what you're doing. And so far, I love it.
What's been the biggest challenge with with kind of understanding the new NFT community?
How many new hats I have to wear. Like 10% of what I do is drawing, and I'm an artist and I have artist brain. So I'm like, I'm going to do NFTs because I want to share my love of drawing and creating. And I'm like, when do I draw and create again? Like, I want to learn how to like market and do all this stuff. And I'm not like, Agnes has a name because Agnes works and put out her name, but now marketing a project, I have no idea how to market a project, which I didn't realize how much you need to market a project. And that's like the biggest learning curve for me, is all these new hats I never thought I would be wearing. And the only way I've learned is launching the project. And the biggest thing for me is that I came into NFTs to do things differently. If I wanted to launch a project the same way, I would have just stayed in comics and just did the same thing. Yeah. And the biggest thing for me, which was one of the biggest obstacles, is that I decided to launch during a bear market. Why not? But the biggest thing me and my team sat on is, do we hold off or do we launch? And we launched knowing that it was most likely not going to sell out, because one, I'm not a marketer, but I'm learning. But two, what was more important to me? Holding off a project and just working up and marketing to make it a hype project, or do I launch and just start creating? And I told them, I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen if we don't sell out. And like, I don't know how important it is to people. People say it's not important, but clearly it's very important. But I won't be able to make comics if we don't launch this project. So I want to do this differently. I want to launch this project with whatever community wants to come on board, and then we'll grow it after that. Because once they see we're creating the comics, then they'll become interested. And I didn't like this idea of just sitting back and just saying, hey guys, this is my project, it's going to launch. And for me, I couldn't do that. I'm like, I am a creator, I need to create. So I went, let's just launch this, let's get it out there, and let's figure it out as we go. So that was like, and still is, the biggest learning experience. But either way, I'm super happy because I'm making comics with everyone. So I'm like, I'm making my comics, so I'm doing good right now. Whether or not it's a sellout, I'm making comics.
You're doing great. I you know, it's really interesting. That's a really interesting point, and I think this is something that every creator, project owner kind of goes through. Is like, well, it's a bear market, or the timing is not right. Should I hold off or wait? I think any time is a good time. Like, full disclosure, we're launching a product in a couple of weeks here. Like, and it's the same thing. It's like, oh, it's a bear market, but so what, right? And I personally, and this is just my own personal opinion, but having done this, just created products for 26 years, like I think hindsight being 2020, like down the road when we get to a bear market again and everyone's looking back, I think the most trustworthy projects are the ones that launch in a bear market and make it work, because it's very easy to make something work when you've sold out and made X number of millions of dollars or whatever, right? And in fact, you could also make a case that it's actually hard as well, because the minute you get into when you make $10 million and you're getting hit by people in a stressful situation, it's very easy to say fuck it, right? Because you've made 10 million, and if you're, especially with some of these teams that are anonymous, it's like, well, why am I here, right? I could be on a beach in Cabo with my money, and I could just leave and no one would even know. It's a completely different paradigm when you launch in a bear market and your name is out there and you're doxxed. It's you, right? Like, there is no reason for you to rug, right? It's the safest project you could possibly do because your face is out there. They know it's in a bear market. Everyone knows it's a bear market. And if you are able to launch and produce, regardless of financial outcome, right? And this is something I think comic creators and animators do very well, because we don't traditionally make a lot of money while we're in that freelance zone, right? But if you're able to launch and build and deliver in a bear market, when there isn't a lot of cash, then I think that is the most trustworthy project you could possibly be, because as it goes up, you've already proven that you're not going anywhere. Hey, times are tough. We launched in the toughest time and we made it and we did it and we delivered. Why wouldn't we continue to do that when times get better and everything is hunky-dory? You know what I mean?
No, I 100% agree on that too. And it's like, honestly, as a comic creator and someone working in the industry, it's like, you just always make sure you have gigs lined up. Like with Digidoribles, I'm still a working artist and I still keep my comic gigs, but one day I want to cut them back because I want to focus. To me, Digidoribles is a community-based creator-owned project in my eyes. I'm creating something that I've always wanted to create, and I'm doing things differently, which is I've always been one to experiment and to try new things of doing things, because I'm like, why not experiment? Why not try new things? So Digidoribles, for me, I just was hoping enough that I could cut back on some of the work so I can focus more on Digidoribles. And that was all I was hoping. And I'm like, oh, great. So it did happen. So now I could designate time to work on the creator owned project while keeping the mainstream projects, while keeping the conventions. Because honestly, what people don't realize, you do need a balance of everything, because I need the published work to get the comic conventions. I need the comic conventions to get my word out on my name and my project. And then Digidoribles is the project which I want to continue building and growing. And I even created an LLC launching this because I'm like, I want to do this right from the start, because to me, Digidoribles is a brand. Digidoribles is something that I want to continue growing. And this is only the first chapter. We purposely called it Digidoribles Chapter 1, Llamaville, because this is the first chapter of something I want to keep building and building and building. And I'm really excited to see where it can go and what we can do with it, because this is my baby. It's my little baby, and now I gotta let it grow and get all cool.
So the first sort of arc of work is, correct me if I'm wrong, but kind of like an anthology, right? Where you're doing short stories, maybe doing a collected edition.
Exactly.
Cool. Where after, like, how do you see, what's the next step? Like, how do you see this kind of growing? Like,
so this is where my brain goes on all sorts of tangents. But what I think is really cool, because NFTs, new technology, there are no limits on what you can do. What I want to do is each chapter of Digidoribles, I want to tell stories a different way and experiment with that. So I'm not going to reveal what chapter 2 is and how we're going to tell that story, but I already kind of told the team, I'm like, hey, for chapter 2, why don't we try this way of telling stories? So I really want it to be very experimental, but in the most fun way with the community involvement. But each time we tell a new chapter, there'll be some new characters being added, but also the way we tell the story is going to change to keep it very interesting. And this way, I think it'll be a really good way to test different ways of telling stories. We'll know what works, what doesn't, what people like and what people don't. But if you don't try and experiment and really put yourself out there, you just won't know. And I've always been very gung-ho at just trying things differently. Like I'm one of the only like all age artists that jumped across all the different properties. It's because I decided to do things differently.
That's right.
And not only have one style, but learn how to adapt to other styles. And not a lot of artists can do that and tell a good story. So I've always been kind of like, well, things are being done like this. How can I flip that around a little? So I'm super excited.
That's awesome. Like really quick, we're going to jump into chat and see who's here. Just kind of do a chat check. So we've got Willie D. What's up? Welcome, Willie. How you doing? He says, "What's up, fam?" Alex Joel says, "Let's go." What's up, Alex? How are you? Mastiff says, "Evening Alpha. Let's go, fam."
Yeah.
All right. Hey, Jordan, how are you? Welcome. Good to see you again. Nice Guy is here. Hey, Nice Guy. Good to see you again as well. Hi, everyone. Bad Kitty, evening. Good evening. Good evening, Bad Kitty. Welcome back. I hope your trip was wonderful. I hear it was. Hype, how are you doing, Hype? Welcome as well. Hype is an incredible talent as well.
Oh, cool.
She's going to be coming out with a project soon, I believe. Hint, hint, hint. Cerebral 619, how are you? Welcome. Lots of hearts for Miss Agnes. How are you? Joe, hi Joe, how you doing? Hey Llama fam, what's up? Jordan says, love these storytelling sessions. They're always so fun. That's awesome. I'm going to dive into that in just a second because I'm really curious about the storytelling sessions. Joe says, yeah, I can't wait to see the finished product.
Oh, same here.
Cerebral says, watching Miss Agnes draw is amazing.
Aww.
And I have to say, I checked out some of your YouTube videos, and it is pretty fun. I love it. You have a really positive energy, and of course, the work is phenomenal. So it's really great.
Yeah, I have fun.
Jordan says, Agnes putting on the work.
Yeah, those YouTube videos were all launched during COVID when I couldn't do comic conventions anymore, and I wanted to have that community interaction. So I launched Art Time with Aggie as my way of interacting with the community and teaching art that way.
Oh, that's awesome. So I kind of, when you were speaking earlier, I kind of was mentally referencing those videos. Is that kind of what you do during your cons, where you're kind of explaining kind of how you're drawing as you're doing it?
Well, if people ask, yes. So, for example, I was just at Washington, D.C., and two brothers separately came up to me, and one of them wanted to get into animation and comic books. So as I was drawing the character for him, he was asking me questions. He's like, well, how would you recommend setting up a portfolio? How are you doing your layouts? And I talked about, like, I'm like, well, I set up characters this way. When you're setting up a portfolio, you need to have your anatomy. So I told him how even I draw cute characters, I understand anatomy, I understand perspective. So it's really cool because the whole time I was drawing his piece, he was asking me a lot of questions, and it so happened it was later in the day, so it was a little slower. So I had a little more time just to spend with him answering these questions. So I like going to sometimes slower shows, and sometimes I like the bigger shows. I like a combination of both because the smaller ones, I get more one-on-one time, which doesn't feel as rushed. The bigger shows are definitely rushed, but I get a lot of really amazing requests, and it's like organized chaos. And then the next day, his brother came, and it felt like almost like deja vu because they're twins, but they're slightly different.
Oh wow!
So I was just like, your brother came. He's like, yeah. I'm like, you guys are twins. He's like, yeah. Because I'm like, oh my god, even like somewhat he talked like him, but just slightly different. So it was really cool because his questions were slightly different, but asked the same way, which was tripping my brain out.
Oh.
It was so cool, and they were so sweet. So this show, I had a lot of you know what was crazy too, which I didn't realize. So when COVID happened, I didn't know that I was just at AwesomeCon. AwesomeCon actually reposted my Art Time with Aggie. So I didn't realize a lot of people who followed Art Time with Aggie actually were from Washington, D.C. So this weekend, the amount of parents and their kids who came and started talking to me about how they're so grateful that I did Art Time with Aggie, I was like, wow, everyone from here watched Art Time with Aggie? And I was like, I was flattered and like going a little like, oh my god, I didn't realize so many people watched it. But at the same time, like, did everyone from Washington DC watch it? And finally one of the nice ladies, she's like, oh no, Washington DC AwesomeCon reposted it, so I bet you got a lot of followers that way. And I was like, oh know, but it's so cool. Like the Comic Cons supporting the artists during that time and really helping connect the people looking for content with the comic creators that were offering the content. So I thought that was beautiful. So it really shows that it's such a great comic community, that the comic conventions, the creators, the companies were all working together during a time of insanity and still making it so that everyone was finding a way to connect. And I really love that.
What's your one of your favorite conventions?
I choked on my water. The Beast is my favorite comic convention.
What's the Beast? I don't know if I've heard of this.
No, it's San Diego Comic Con.
Okay, well,
San
that
Diego
Beast. Gotcha.
Comic Con is a beast.
It is a beast.
Overwhelming. It is crazy, but I do it every year. And do you want to know why it's one of my favorites, other than the complete insanity?
Sure.
The most of my regulars, actually, that in New York, I would say New York is my second place, even though I picked the two biggest one, is because they're the ones I've been doing the longest. I've been doing San Diego, other than the COVID, maybe about 10 years or plus. Same thing with New York, like a long time. But I've seen families and their kids have slowly grown up before my eyes, which is trippy now as you get older, because you're like, oh my God, all these kids, like one of the kids wasn't even born. And I remember like him being in his mama's belly. And I remember the little kids being toddlers. Now there's like little kids and the kids like running around and talking. And I'm like, oh my God, it's so surreal, but it feels like I have like this extended family that I see every single year. And that's one of my favorite things. And I look forward to it every year. I'm like, am I going to see my regulars? Am I going to see my regulars, knowing that their kids are growing up right before my eyes? And each year, other than COVID, we reconnect. So the crazy thing is that with COVID, we had the 2-year gap, and San Diego had like a smaller show. And I saw two of the families, and I was like, and it felt weird because all of a sudden the kids jumped in age because of the 2-year mark.
Right.
Wait. You grew too much. You're too tall now.
Right.
But it's one of my favorite and most beautiful things. And that's why I love those shows so much, not only because of insanity, but because of the people I see. And just, I love seeing the kids grow up. They're like, it's like all this giant extended family I have.
Oh, that's so awesome. San Diego's been fantastic, and I've done New York every single year since it started, except for last year. Last year was the very first New York Comic Con that I missed. But it won't happen again. But same thing. Like it's I don't know, man. There's something really special about conventions. You know, I mean, the older you get, you know, you end up knowing more people, and especially if once you have tables, and like every year you're kind of sitting next to new people, but then you see the same people, especially as you go across the country, and you know, you kind of, it becomes a little bit of a traveling caravan, which I kind of like, you know.
Yeah, I love it. And even like the people I see, like my peers, like they're my extended family too, and I look forward to seeing my convention family. Like there's definitely regular people I try to hang out almost every show, and a couple I try to catch up with, but it's like every show my extended family is just waiting to catch up, and I love that so much. So yay, conventions are back.
I know. So do you think there's a way, and this is something that we talk about over here with our project. We have a comic and animation project called Adult Fantasy. And one of the things that we talk about is, you know, a lot of the people who come to our project from Web3, and this is just in NFTs in general, like a lot of people, this is the first thing they've ever collected. They're brand new collectors. Like we kind of, I think, make a mistake thinking that they collected baseball cards or comics or art, because that's the kind of stuff that's being gravitated towards, right? The digital versions of those things. But for a lot of people, this is the first thing they've ever collected. Like this is the bug that got them, right? Just like it was like comics with us. And do you think that there is a bridge where, you know, people start collecting, and I guess there is, but I want to kind of get your perspective too. Like, is there a bridge, or how do we create that bridge from the Web3 world, and kind of move people into more of the traditional comic conventions? Or is that not a thing? Is it going to be more of like an NFT NYC, you know, strictly Web3 based thing? Do you think there's a bridge between the two?
I definitely think there's a bridge between the two. And part of that bridge is trying to connect comic conventions to the NFT shows, for example. But as a creator, one thing I'm really active is I make sure my feed is a balance of NFTs, comic work, and conventions. And the reason I try to keep it balanced is because I want the NFT people to see the comic work I do. And I want them to see the conventions I attend because I want them to get curious. I want them to ask questions because for me, it's all about introducing, sharing knowledge. And that works vice versa. I want comic people to come to the NFT side of things, but I also want NFT people to come to the comic side of things. So that's why I'm very proactive. And every comic convention, I post images from when I'm there, my table. Now that I'm trying to get back to some video editing, I've been trying to put together like video clips of like highlights of cosplay and stuff because I want to make the NFT community curious and showing them what happens at these shows and how different it is from anything NFT related. I'm hoping that they'll be like, ooh, maybe I want to check out a comic convention now. It's like, oh, I bought these type of comics, but I never thought about like looking at actual comic book comics. So one thing I'm very, very proactive across all my social medias is trying to show a little bit of everything I do to show that you can have a balance. It doesn't have to be one or the other, because a lot of time NFT creators are like, I'm strictly an NFT creator. I'm like, no, you're a creator. NFTs are the tool you're using to create. And that's the way I viewed it always, is NFTs are a tool to create something beautiful, something new, something different. But I'm a creator and I want to share that content. So I'm hoping that if I keep showing a bit of everything in a very organized, chaotic balance, because my brain's a little chaotic, that I'm hoping that both sides will become curious about each other. That's my goal, at least.
That's awesome. Yeah. One of the, you just, something popped in my head while you were just saying that. And you know, one of the things that really got me fascinated by the NFT space, beyond like royalties and technology and just amazing creative, just the burgeoning new medium of this, was when I started looking at the early NFT projects, especially like early last year, and this trend has continued. But I mean, what, 75%, maybe more, like every single NFT project on their roadmap has a comic book as one of their deliverables. And I saw this, and coming from comics, like, look, you know, there are arguments whether the comic industry is good or bad, or you know, blossoming or collapsing. These arguments have been going on for as long as I've been in comics. I've been in it a long ass time. So, you know, but I had never seen so much brand new creativity, right? Like certainly in comics, you have companies like Image, and there are independent ways for creators, Kickstarter and Indiegogo. There are plenty of ways for a creator to create their own independent comic book and distribute it and get it out there. But it almost seemed to at least be equaled or dwarfed by the amount of NFT projects that were also like at least claiming to offer that as well, or at least having the desire to create. And I have yet to figure out exactly why that is. The optimist in me is that I'm like, well, they just recognize how badass comics are, right? The cynic in me says, well, they think it's easy to do. They think it's just super, you know, they've never done it before, or most people have never done it before. They think it's super easy. We'll get an artist, we'll do a comic, and it'll be an easy deliverable. So I have this internal battle personally of like I know why I do it, and I'm not really worried about it. But I am curious as to, like, at least in your eyes, like why do you think so many projects, at least initially, say, hey, comics is a deliverable? Like, let's, you know.
Honestly, I think it's a combination of the two, because comics are pretty awesome. And I think also a lot of people don't realize how difficult it is to do a good comic. Anyone can make a comic. That's not stopping. But to make a good comic with good art and good story, that's where you really need to start getting comic creators behind it. Like Josh Blaylock, the reason he's attached to punks and stuff like that is because he's a great storyteller. He understands, and that's what's very smart, is if a comic project in NFTs wants to be successful, they have to start tapping the comic talent to understand how to make a good story. Because I've seen some NFT projects with really cool art, but then does the story make sense? And people don't realize that storytelling is a craft. It is extremely important to understand a good story from a bad story, but everyone wants to make a comic. Just like when you go to any artist alley, you have an artist alley filled with amateur artists, people getting established, and the pros. Exact same thing with NFTs. You're going to have that very, very different levels of people. And it's like, what will make a comic really good is making sure that you don't just put out cool art, but you also put out a really strong story. And that's how you'll do more than just one comic. If you want to do one and done little comic and you don't care about the content, well, I can't agree with that. I'm sorry, because I'm all about telling a good story. And that's what I really want to see. And I really want to see NFTs tapping more creators that understand the mediums, because now they can do that. Now that everyone's starting to understand the technology, more people are going to become curious, more people want to get involved. So I think it's really smart for, if you're a gaming, tap the gaming concept people. They have such a strong understanding. You want to create comics, tap the comic talent. At least bring someone on board, at least as a consultant, so you know what you're doing. And you'll go beyond amateur comic or just pretty art to something that's really, really good, and you could really build on that comic and create more of it, and people will want to read it.
I think that needs to be expanded upon and blasted across the metaverse, because I could not agree more. Like, people do not understand. I mean, comics are such a niche thing still to this day, and the amount of skill, we talked about this a little bit, but the amount of skill needed to actually craft a good comic, between being able to draw and know anatomy and backgrounds and perspective and pacing and storytelling and screenwriting and inking and coloring and pre-production and lettering and fonts and anti-aliasing, like the amount of the breadth of stuff that you need to understand to do it by yourself, let alone get a team to do it. Because even if you say, well, I don't need to do that, I'll just get a team, you still have to understand the process. Otherwise, how do you know who you're going to hire? How do you know they can do a good job? You have no clue, right? And this was summarized to me in my own personal experience, and this is just my own opinion. It's not I'll just say it like this: is my own opinion. When I was at Marvel, it was during sort of the really big launch, like the Marvel MCU was taking off, right? The movies, Iron Man was out, Iron Man 2 was out, like it was already taking off. And the reason, in my opinion, that it was taking off and that whole big arc did so well is that for a majority of it, the Hollywood writers' room was including the Marvel writers' retreat. They were including all of the Marvel writers, and they were treating it like a Marvel retreat. And for those that don't know, a Marvel retreat, or any corporate creative retreat, is you basically take all the artists, or in this case, you take all the writers, and you fly them somewhere, you put them in a room, you have a bunch of bagels, coffee, some alcohol, and you come up with some really cool stories, and you have all of these different creative people working on their different books. And not only are they coming up with their own stories, but this is how you get these great crossover stories. And, oh, well, I want the Hulk to do this, or, oh, cool, if the Hulk does that, then when that issue comes out in July, we'll have Spider-Man come in from my book, and we'll do this. And so there's a way for all these big storylines, this big giant thread of rope of a story just comes together. It's really incredible. And the MCU was using that because they had screenwriters, but they didn't really have any insight into the Marvel universe. As the movies got more successful, right? And this happened after I was already gone, but it was already starting when I left, because I was hearing plenty about it. All of a sudden, the executives, the Hollywood people, started kind of cutting the Marvel writers out, to the point where very soon the Marvel writers, they were not taking the advice of the writers anymore. So the people that had a direct mainline tapping in, not just to the Marvel universe, but to the fandom and what the fans liked. Because of course, this, you're like on the front lines. Like, there's something very safe. I daydream about being like a like a screenwriter, and you just write something. And if anyone hates your movie, you're like, yeah, fuck it, I don't care. Like, you're getting paid, and it sucked, but maybe the next one. Like, you write something that's bad, or you draw something that the fans don't like, you're like, they're coming to your booth, right? Like, you are going to hear about it. And so they cut that off. And the reason, in my opinion, that those early movies, that first entire arc was so good, was because you had the people who knew exactly what the fans wanted involved from day one. And the minute that was cut, in my opinion, you kind of saw the slow little decline a little bit, right? Again, my opinion. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. And I think it's so smart of tapping the talent that knows what they're doing, especially if you're building it for ideas and to make sure the consistency and everything works.
Yeah.
100%.
So that's another question I have. So you're doing something that I love, which is you're combining education and creativity, and in a light, fun way, you're bringing people into the creation process. Like, I believe, and I wholeheartedly believe, that this is what is going to create new hardcore fans of the medium of comics, period. Right? Because you're really bringing them into the process. So the other question that poses is, there are so many people that want to be involved, yet there's always this kind of fear that some people have, especially if you've never written if you have someone in the community, they've never written a story before, they've never drawn anything before, but they've always had the desire to do that. Maybe everyone, I again, personal belief, I believe that everybody is creative, period. Everybody has a creative spark within them, and if you really look at people's lives, you will find how that creativity comes out. And it just doesn't necessarily have to be visual, it doesn't have to be music or dance, it can be in a million different ways, but creativity always comes through, right? It could be just the way you raise your family. There's a million different ways this can happen. So how do you sort of help or bring in people who may want to participate but don't feel like they can contribute, or don't know how to contribute? Have you thought about that? Is that something you not worry about? Like, how do you address this?
No, I try to make it as open as possible, and I make it very clear. If you want to contribute, please contribute. If you don't, just hang out, chat, listen. And part of it is I explain everything. And that way, even if you don't want to contribute, at least you know where my brain's at and you know what I'm thinking. So at least you have an understanding of it. Whether or not you want to take part, that's totally up to you. But I try to do it at a level that I'm assuming no one knows how I create comics. And if they do, then they're getting an overview of certain things. But I'm assuming every single person coming into my sessions has never worked on a comic before, has never wanted to write a comic, has never seen how it's put together. So what I want to do is I want to provide the knowledge that at least you know how it's created, you know what's involved, you know what I went through to create it, you know what education I have and what I think about. So if you want to do it in your own time, or you want to do the research, at least you have the ability to know what to Google, to know how to deep dive further, to know what questions to ask if you want to ask. But I want to make it that I give a very good overview of everything, just in case this is something you're interested in, you can learn it. And if not, maybe you're just curious to see how it forms and coming in each step. And if you just want to see the final product, you could come in and see the final product. So I try to make it just very easy and not too overwhelming at any point. And if people have direct questions, I answer those direct questions as well.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. So it's really sort of I don't want to say a buffet, but that's the first word that popped into my head.
It's a buffet of creation from start to finish. And that's why I made sure that each week we cover a topic. And that's why each week I don't go from layout to pencils right away, because laying out a comic involves a lot of steps and I don't want to create that as overwhelming. So I made sure that each and every step we designate at least a week or two, so I thoroughly explain it, we create it, we understand it before moving to the next step. And I thought that was very, very important in creating, is that to move on to the next step, we've explained the current step as clearly as we can, everything that's involved with it, and then we move on to the next one.
Yeah, I love that. I think education is so important, and I really, I cannot imagine how there won't be at least somebody inspired in your group who's inspired by this to create their own comics,
I hope
their
so.
own,
I know one person has gone back to writing, which
love it.
made me really happy to hear that they're inspired enough to want to go back to writing stories, and that made me so happy. I was like,
Like today, that's so wonderful. And next thing you know, it's like they're all of a sudden they've discovered Scott McCloud and they're doing 24-hour comics and
yeah.
right. They're just
I mentioned Scott McCloud constantly. Almost anytime someone's like, I want to get into comics, I'm like, you are reading Scott McCloud.
the best book ever. The genius, absolutely brilliant.
Changes in the way your mind thinks about pacing. Like
Yeah.
that book was life-changing for me, and I read it like in one go because I was so fascinated. And then I sat back and I looked at my page and I saw it in such a different way. And that's why
Same.
understanding comics, Scott McCloud, everyone, if you want to get into comics, you are reading that book.
It is the best. It is a Bible for create. I think it's just a Bible for creativity, period. Like it's absolute his dissection of how visual language is formed and created and parsed is just masterful. Like he just tapped into some kind of source. I don't know what it was, but it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, and the way he tells it is so clear and engaging. It really makes you think. I love that book. It was I read it when I was like 19, 20, and it's been a part of my life ever since.
Yeah, me too. I read it. Mine is all. That's probably out of all of the mint condition polybagged comics that I own, that one is torn up and dog-eared and the way it should be,
Yes. Exactly.
So what if someone was just getting into comics? I mean you're introducing a lot of new people to the medium, right? And I think it's really cool that everybody in this space is a beginner, right? You're either a beginner. There are no veteran NFT creators really, and likewise on the collector side, everybody is learning. You're either learning about NFTs, you're learning about Web3, or you're learning through the project creator, and in this case, comics. Like what other like comics do you recommend people? Like, do you go full like Watchmen, or do you like?
I actually struggle reading Watchmen. It's the pace. I know it's an amazing book, but every time I try to read Watchmen, I actually struggle with it to begin with. Like I've read it once, but it took me a couple tries to get into it.
Yeah,
so I don't tend to recommend Watchmen for anyone who's just new to comics. But it is a very, very good story. It's just the pacing is a little difficult for me and my brain to follow, especially the first few pages. Then once I get into it, it becomes a lot easier to read. But no, taboo. Sorry. Well, for me, when I recommend comics, I usually recommend like, what type of stories do you like? Do you like horror genre? Well, then I can recommend some horror. Do you want like something fun and whimsical? I could recommend something fun and whimsical. So for me, when it comes to recommending comics to people, I rather know what they like first to know what I could recommend off the top of my head. So Saga is one I recommend either way.
Saga's awesome.
Oh my gosh. I cry so hard during that. Oh my God. All the feels, all of them.
Saga is a great book. That is an absolute. I think that's a win recommendation for sure.
Yeah, that one. As long as you're over a certain age, I will recommend that book always. It's masterful. It's easy to follow. It is so emotional. It tugs on all your heartstrings. Wow.
So,
really cool.
So how can people get a hold of you if they want to jump in, if they want to purchase Digidoribles? They just go to comicboxels.com. Is that correct?
Yeah. They go to Comic Boxels where they could learn all about Digidoribles, but not just Digidoribles. They can learn about all our amazing projects that we have lined up in Comic Boxels themselves, because we want to be the platform for all things comic book, and we really want to do it in different ways. So I highly recommend not just checking out Digidoribles, which check out Digidoribles, but check out everything our site has, because there's so much really cool things that people, and the really cool thing about Combox is if you really don't like one thing, there'll be something there for you to like. And I think that's what makes it so special, is that it will have something for everyone. And some people will like them all, which makes it even cooler. But yeah, comicboxels.com is definitely the place to go.
Awesome. And yeah, I think what you guys are creating over there is absolutely fantastic. I love it. Let's see, we've got nice guy says, here to support our Llama Mama. Joe Sharp says, new characters. You were talking about new characters.
Oh, I can't say anymore. I'm sorry. We're still in chapter 1, and chapter 1 still has a lot of content to deliver.
Massive says, wonderfully said, Todd. Thank you. He says, creativity is expressed in many forms in many ways. Very true.
Ooh,
nice guy
bone.
says,
yeah.
Jeff Smith's bone is good. Oh yeah, I've got my.
So good.
Look at this bad boy right here.
That is definitely a recommendation to everyone.
Bone is the best. Bone is fantastic. I highly recommend Bone as well. That's absolutely fantastic. Josh is. Hey, what's up, Josh? How are you?
Josh. Speaking of the Josh.
That's right. More comics. 100% more comics.
100% more comics always.
Absolutely. So with that said, please everybody go check out comicboxels.com. Go check out Digidoribles. Jump in. The art is fantastic. The project is wonderful. You get to take part in the actual creation of it. You're going to learn how to create a comic, which I think is amazing. Thank you so much, Agnes.
Thank you so much for having me. I had such a blast. I love it. Thank you.
Absolutely. So everybody, thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it. With that said, go check out comicboxels.com, Digidoribles. It's the project to check out. Get it, buy it, support it. We got to support our good creators and our fantastic artists. And with that, we love you all. As you guys know, after our evening alphas, we always hop into our Discord. We always play some after party games. So everyone is welcome to play some games. We're going to have a little party. But with that said, we'll see you next time. So thank you, everybody.